Hello, my founding fam. Welcome to another training session. Today, we are going to be talking about labeling our feelings. And FYI, just so you know, this is a bad thing. What do I mean by this? What I mean is we tend to label things. We do it all the time in every aspect of our life, and the people we come across, the cars we drive, our everything. We label everything, right? So when it comes to emotions, normally we're labeling good and bad, right? So happy is a good emotion. Excited is a good emotion. Bad emotion, guilt, shame, terrible emotions. Okay, forget this. Stop labeling your emotions as good or bad. If you want to put a positive or negative to them, I'm cool with that. But labeling emotions as good or bad is not a good thing. It's not a good thing, because if you get stuck in a more negative cycle, or you're in a negative situation or circumstance, you're going to classify your feelings as bad, and you're going to not want to have them, so you're not going to work through them. Which, guess what? What happens? What do we know to be true? They're going to keep happening. You're going to continually be triggered by the same things, and guess what? That negative connotation, that bad connotation is going to keep coming up. So every time you feel these, your mind is going to go, oh, that's bad. Bury it, ignore it, hide it, don't think about it. Guess what? The cycle starts all over again for the rest of your life, until you decide to say, hey, cut it out. No more. Right? Come on, guys. You know I'm like this. I hope you appreciate it, because I ain't changing. But, okay, so your downfall with attaching labels to your emotions is that judging your emotions keeps you from really understanding what you're feeling and why. So, again, let's stop labeling emotions as good or bad, because that is not the case. You're going to feel bad emotions just as much as you do good emotions. So keep the labels off. They interfere with your EQ growth. They interfere with your growth. So let's just not do it. But when you allow yourself to sit with an emotion, to sit in emotion for a little bit and kind of assess it and figure out why and how and get to the root cause, then that's when you become fully aware, right? So you become fully aware of your emotions. You become more self-aware because you're putting in the work personally to figure out, the whys and the hows. Let's see. Oh, this is good. I want you to suspend judgment of your emotions. So what does this mean? I don't want you to pass judgment on what you should be feeling in a situation. So say there's a bad emotion that you're feeling, and you automatically start judging yourself, or you start judging the emotion. The emotion is bad. I can't believe I'm feeling this way. I don't want to feel this way. I'm not going to feel this way. And then, you fall back into those bad patterns, whether that's ignoring, burying, pivoting, looking the other direction, whatever that may be. Okay, so we're not going to pass judgment on our emotions, because what that does, when you're passing judgment on an emotion, good, bad, indifferent, whatever, it just layers another piece that you're going to have to work on getting out of. So say you feel guilty for something, one of the worst bad emotions, guilt or shame, by beating yourself up for feeling guilty or shameful, just adds another foot of dirt that you have to dig yourself out of. And the more you do it, the more it keeps happening, the deeper and deeper you're going to get, and the harder and harder it is going to be to dig yourself out of that situation. So, again, when you confront things as they're happening or right after they happened, the sooner that you can do that, the easier it is going to be on you mentally, emotionally, and physically, right? Because what happens when we feel those bad emotions? We feel the repercussions physically, so painfully sometimes, right? When we're dealing with emotions that have a bad connotation, that are negative, like shame or guilt, what happens to your body? Think about a time where you were shameful or guilty. It hurts. It's painful. Your chest starts cracking in constriction. Your palms get sweaty. You get dry mouth. You start getting teary-eyed. Your fight or flight starts kicking in, right? So now think about that. If you don't confront or deal with that as it's happening or soon after it happens, what do we just talk about? That bearing, that pivoting, that ignoring, all that just adds layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers until you finally decide to dig yourself out of that hole. Right? So isn't it just easier to put a little extra work and feel a little extra discomfort up front instead of being re-triggered and 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 re-triggered into infinity until you decide to start working on it? I don't know about you, but confronting something head on like that sounds a whole lot better than dealing with it for the rest of my life with my head in the sand. Oh, what? Okay, so what we can do here is as your emotions are happening, I want you to feel them and think about them, assess them as they are happening. And I'm telling you, your body notices this stuff before your rational brain does. So, let's use a good example. So say you're in love. Love. Don't you just love it? But, okay, you're going on a first date. And you're super nervous. You're excited. You're optimistic. You know, all of these wonderful things that start happening with a new and budding relationship. And you're at dinner and your toes touch under the table, your feet touch, and you have that like automatic spark, you know, or your hands graze as you're going for the salt and pepper shakers, and oh, it's another one, it's almost like a zing, right? And then you're going home and you're at the front door and there's like all of this expectancy and this sexual tension and like, oh my gosh, and your lips meet for like 3 seconds, but it feels like you're in this like tidal wave and you can feel it from your head to your toes, and then he backs up and says goodnight and goes on, and you just like are living in this euphoric state. And you're thinking about it over and over and over again. And you're just living with those wonderful emotions from the most perfect first date. Was it actually that perfect? Do you know? Or were you letting your emotions rule the situation? I'm sure if you sat there and you thought about it as it was happening, your body wouldn't react the way that it did. So, like, let's break this down. Okay, you meet up and your feet touch under the table. Your initial reaction was the spark, the zing, or almost kind of like the apprehensive, like, oh no, did he notice it too? What do I do? Looking at him for a reaction. You know, all the stupid things that girls do. Break it down. That's all you gotta do. Okay, so you're not breaking it down when you're in it because you're loving the emotion. You're staying in it, keeping with it. But how was your conversation? Would you have acted the same way if you accidentally played footsies with your brother under the table at dinner? XYZ. What happened? Why were you feeling that way? Were you able, once the footsies started happening, did you let that emotion stick in your limbic system and stay there instead of letting it flow through to the rational part of your brain? No, you're not going to, because you're enjoying the moment. You're enjoying the motion. You're stuck sitting in the emotion. But what else? What did you know? What was the trigger? Why did it happen? Let it out of your limbic system to get to the rational piece of your brain. Now, I'm not telling you not to enjoy those positive emotions, because gosh dang, do I live for those emotions. I think all of us do. Don't you want to be in love for the first time again every day for the rest of your life with your spouse? I know I do. But say you go through all of that, right? Sitting in the feels, loving the feels, not being rational about the situation at all. Well, what happens the next day, the next week, if he doesn't call back? Were you actually analyzing the situation, or were you living in those emotions? Because if you were rational, if you weren't living in those emotions, you would then figure it out. Realize, oh, X, Y, and Z didn't go great in this date. We didn't really connect. We didn't have chemistry on these levels, it was nice, blah, blah, blah. Okay, take it or leave it. If you were rational at all at any point in this night on this date, then you would be able to break it down. Or if you were figuring it out as you were going, as you were feeling these emotions, well, guess what? You can change the course of the date. You can change your interaction. You can change your emotions, what you're saying, how you're listening, your tone, your inflection, your body language, all of it. But no, you didn't do any of that because you were sitting in your emotions. Even though they were positive and you were sitting there, guess what? It was not productive for you. Great. You had an awesome night where you felt like a princess. You just felt in like a love haze for a good 6 hours, right? Well, guess what? Now you're going to be questioning everything for weeks. What did I do? What didn't I do? Why didn't he call back? Oh my gosh, this is so awful. I'm such a terrible person. I'm never going to date again. I mean, you can see the rabbit holes. You can feel them. How many of you have been there before? I feel like we all have. Everyone's been on a first date. If you haven't, call me. Gina, I'll hook you up. But my goodness, God love emotions, but God love your rational mind too. Because so many people, and come on, you all know me by now. I'm an Enneagram 8. I am the choleric. I am the person who's gonna give it to you straight. I thought for the longest time that emotions were so stupid. And people who can't deal with their emotions, mainly females, at least in my experiences, so dumb when it comes to your emotional intelligence. It drives me nuts. It drives me up a wall. And it's driven me up a wall for my entire life. I hated, spoke this out loud, felt it, lived it, hated emotions. Because guess what? I was told that emotions made you vulnerable, and vulnerability equaled weakness, and no one was going to see me weak. No one was going to puncture my armor, because guess what? This is a brick house. Steel house, baby. Steel trap. Nothing's getting in here. But that's such a low EQ play. And the fact that I know this now and that I'm not that person, praise you, Jesus, because my life would not look as good as it does, would not feel as good as it does right now if that wasn't the case. So yes, I want you to enjoy life and all that emotion can bring you, but I also want you to know why you're having emotions, what your emotions mean, how you can use them to influence your family, your household, your clients, the people you're trying to impact, the world. Because guess what? If you're not in control of your emotions and your emotional state, you are not going to be able to make the impact that you want. You're not. It's not going to happen. So, work on these emotions. Emotions aren't good or bad. They can be positive or negative, but you're going to feel the full range, and I want you to be prepared. I want you to know the tools, the tricks, the tips of how to work through your emotions so that you don't have situations in your life that are on terrible, awful repeat again and again and again. I want you to live life to the fullest with the potential that you have no idea that you have. Okay? This is why we are here. This is why I am here. Let's grow this ish together so that we can take over the world, baby. Let's go. I hope you have a wonderful day.